What is up, everybody? This is the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and I'm not sure what number episode this is, but it'll be in the show title. So, solo episode today. We have some guests lined up for later on this month, but real quick, I want to go over one. I've gotten a few questions over the past past 2 weeks about gardening and stuff. Obviously, I'm huge into the outdoors, hunting, gardening, etc. So when it comes to trying to tie that into nutrition and improving our relationship with food, I like to talk about that a little bit. I think it's really important. It can really help you if it's something you're looking to do. And if it's something you already do, then it can be a way to like reframe your mind around it. And maybe it's this year, if you're more advanced, you're already doing it. Maybe this year is a good year to kind of like challenge yourself a little bit more with it without, totally overwhelming yourself. So let's get into today's episode because I actually do have a guest that I'm going to be recording it here in a little bit, and this needs to process and everything. So it's ready to go. And then actually, I am traveling some. I'm visiting some family. So next week, there'll be a Monday episode. That's the guest who I'm recording after I do this podcast. But I don't know if there'll be a Friday episode. That being said, what you can expect is I'm also doing another podcast called Don't Talk About Fat Loss with Aaron McDonald and Sarah Kelly with the Ape Wellness Collective. So look out for that. That's officially launching. Is it this week? It's this week or next week? It's officially launching. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be more stuff. That's obviously from the title. We're not really talking about just pure fat loss. And then you're going to get three people's perspective. So that's one of the reasons this podcast is having a little bit of a change, going in the direction more of like what I want to talk about, which is a little bit more outdoorsy and utilizing training and nutrition to optimize the outdoors and vice versa. So let's talk about improving our relationship with food. If you have a poor relationship with food, food gives you anxiety. You have a black and white view of food of like good versus bad, healthy versus not healthy. And it's hard to navigate. You're not sure what to eat, especially with vegan, carnivore, keto, and all the fad diets out there. How do you navigate all this chaos and noise that is in the nutrition realm? I'm not going to say actual like nutrition information because a lot of it is just like blatant misinformation. So instead, a challenge I think is good for people is trying to source some of your own food. So if you know my hunting story, I started hunting because my wife became allergic to red meat. And because of that, or she needs B12 and she needs iron in her diet because she tends to run anemic and she tends to get low B12. So we needed to keep red meat in. And because of her past history with ED, she couldn't just take like iron supplements. And then getting infusions, someone's going to be like, well, you could just go to the hospital and get infusions. Like that was just not realistic. She's a nurse with her busy schedule, like not realistic to go someplace. And she's a nurse at a nursing facility. So it's not even the same hospital she could do it at, guys. And we found out bison was available. Like she could tolerate, she did well with that, not tolerate. She did well with that. So I started hunting. And once I started hunting, all of a sudden that meat became like gold. And so an example I tell people is we've had chicken that's gone bad in the fridge and you're like, oh man, this sucks. What a waste of money. Like, next week you go buy the chicken. When it comes to venison, or even if you raise your own animals, so that's also another option here. Once you harvest something, that's kind of it. So for example, with hunting season's only so long. So once hunting's closed down, that's as much meat as you're kind of going to get from wild game until hunting season opens up again, which means you either have to make it last or once it's gone until next year. So you value it a little bit more than other meat, especially if you're like us and you eat it all the time. If it's something that's just sitting in your freezer, you might not value it as much. But if you value it, like it is our main source of red meat, which is venison, when you value that, you're going to maybe portion it a little bit better. You're going to savor those meals. You're going to make sure that you're not just like wasting it. Like we've accidentally wasted some ground, being sleep deprived with when my youngest or my oldest was born. I left like 2 pounds of ground venison out on top of the freezer, came back like 2 days later to a mess. It's like, fuck. Or another time, like we would put burgers into the warmer and then came down like the next morning, opened up like was looking for the leftovers. Like we made these for lunch. So it wasn't the next morning. It was like the next afternoon, and then open up the oven. It's like, fuck. It hurts a little bit because, like, hey, like that's gone. One, I busted my butt. So I was out, even if you're in tree stand, like you're out for hours, then you harvest it. I process it all myself. So I spent hours processing that to then turn around and it go to waste and just sucks. So this episode's not about hunting, but that story was leading into how can you do it for yourself if you're not into hunting, gardening, etc. This is going to be geared more towards someone who is just starting out, someone who's a beginner, someone who's thinking about it, not someone who's more advanced. If you're more advanced, you can continue listening to the episode. Maybe you'll get some tips here and there. But if you're just like, okay, I want to start growing plants. I'm thinking about it. I just don't know where to start. So going back to the wild game thing, this is how you can improve your relationship with food by growing it yourself, putting in the effort, and then you're going to savor and enjoy those foods. So foods maybe you don't necessarily love that much to buy from the grocery store, all of a sudden become way better. Or you realize that some of the grocery store stuff that has been like sitting on the shelves for a little while doesn't taste as good as homegrown. Like homegrown potatoes picked that day taste way better than the potatoes that have been sitting on the shelves for who knows how long. Like they've been in storage for how long. Potatoes that are picked like right then and there, way different. And it's like, those are the best potatoes ever. And if you're thinking like, like I like potatoes, but how good? Like I'm one of those people like potatoes are good. We have potatoes quite often, but I'm not going to go out of my way to like, oh my God, potatoes are my favorite thing ever. Like, no. That being said, when you grow them yourself, different story. A more relatable thing for you might be like if you've had like a really like bland, not very good, mealy sweet potato versus like one of those sweet potatoes that taste like candy. Like we had those last night. That would be a comparison, like the grocery store versus like growing yourself. You also get access to way more varieties than are in the store. So varieties like plants and things that are in the store are grown more for profit, which means they need to be prolific fruits and veggies. They need to ship well. Like you don't want super bruised up apples and things. One, they don't look pretty. Two, they don't last very long. So that's bad for both the grocery store because they will want to not have product go bad, but also you, once you go home, you don't want it to be like, oh man, I have to use this tomorrow or it's going to go bad. So they're grown that way. I think there's like, so for example, avocados. Everybody knows the Hass or Hass. I think it's Hass avocado. It's what you think of when I say avocado. But I think there's something like 300 different varieties in the world of avocados. Now, some of them are just basically inedible, but there's many varieties that are edible that you're not going to see. At some grocery stores, you'll have like 2 different kinds. But the reason they do the Hass is you can ship them easily. They don't bruise up as much. So then once you get them home finally, you have a nice green avocado that is not all bruised up and you have to waste half of it. That's how it should be. Now we've probably had experience with like throwing out half an avocado before. But that being said, growing the vegetable garden, like getting into gardening, So if you're just thinking about, what I would recommend is doing something like a container garden. This is where I started. I started off with container gardens. Um, it's a little bit of investment. If you have a plot of land, you can always kind of like till up the grass and everything and plant in ground. There's It's a little bit harder. You're going to deal with more pests, which is why if you're just trying things out, I would recommend more like containers. Get some big old containers. Don't need the nicest ones. Get some high quality soil. It doesn't, and some potting soil, maybe some compost to mix into it. Get good quality. Don't skimp out, and then plant maybe some peppers, tomatoes, a couple things. Don't overwhelm yourself on year one. And you can always message me about this for your individual situation. You have to take a note of your climate in your area. So, for example, like right now, it's like time to start seeds for my area, but we don't actually like put anything in ground. Like our last frost date is estimated to be April 15th. You can look that up online on the USDA. You can look up your zone and figure out. So we're 7A here. So our last frost date is estimated to be April 15th. It might be earlier, it might be later, but you'll have to take note, like, is that the best time to plant your tomatoes and peppers? They might need to be planted a little bit later because they don't do well once things get below 40 degrees. Even though it's not going to frost, they're still not going to do well in ground. They would do better in pots still being inside. Whereas other plants might be able to go out, like peas and things like that. So figure out what you want to plant. Start easy. Beans, peas, tomatoes and peppers are usually pretty easy. I would recommend, if you're doing a pot, do determinate. That way they only get like a certain height. You're not like dealing with the craziness. You can go indeterminate heirlooms. They're fantastic. It's what I grow the most, but for ease, like you're like dipping your toe in, you want it like a very easy, good experience, especially if you travel a bunch, determinates. That being said, if you do travel a bunch, determinate tomatoes all ripen up at once. So that would be the one downside. If you're like, oh yeah, like we travel every other week in summer, you might miss out on almost your entire tomato crop. So again, individuals, this is just to kind of give you an idea of where what direction to go. I would recommend container gardening. And if you're like, already this sounds like too much, I got you. Start with herbs. Herb gardening is pretty easy. Most of them are pretty tolerant. Probably what you'll find is you might give your herbs too much love, like too much water, especially since most popular herbs are Mediterranean. They like hot, semi-dry conditions. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So basil is easy to grow. Mint's fucking easy to grow in a container. It's like a weed. You can literally almost kill it, and then it'll keep coming back. Thyme and rosemary. You can grow all these things. Parsley and cilantro are cool weather. They're good early spring and fall. You can grow marjoram, savory, whatever. Like, take a look in your pantry. What are the herbs you use a bunch, or what are the herbs you wish you used more of? For us in summer, there's nothing better than pestos, or just like basil, like a caprese salad. We do a lot of Italian dishes in the summer, so we grow a lot of basil. So for us, it's basil. And then where you're going to put your pots. So they're going to need sun, but if they're going to get absolutely wrecked with heat, so you probably know this already, is like where you're going to put it super hot all the time, or is it like pretty cool? And you can get different varieties for the reason. So you want something that's going to be, say, like slow to bolt if it's like going to be super hot. So like our back deck, in summer, it can get 120, 130 degrees. So if you're planting something that's like, it can't really deal with heat, it doesn't do well. And that's the issue we deal with each year. I literally got strawberries that were grown for being in like Arizona. They were grown for like the Southwest summers, for our back deck, but they could handle the cold too. So that is, you kind of have to take your individual like situation and figure that out. So the reason is we do that. Chives and sage are two other ones. Our chive and sage plants are going on 9 years, 9 years old. They started in containers when my wife and I we first started dating in our apartment, and they've just like traveled with us. Now they're in the ground here at our townhouse, and yeah, it'll probably be their final resting place. But they keep coming back year after year. So those are also great herbs you can use. So if you use tons of scallions and stuff, like scallions are nice, you can grow those, but they're kind of one and done. Like a lot of times I'll just grab chives. No, it's not exactly the same, but we have such like a giant like clump of chives that, okay, you need to throw some scallions or green peppers on this dish. I just go grab the chives, cut that up. Like we have a massive amount. We never have to buy them other than like wintertime if we're making a dish with them. So it's nice being able to just go out back, grab the things you need, grab them from a pot, grab them from you can do them in under a grow light in your house, in your basement, if you don't have kids and you don't have animals that are going to mess with it, maybe in your living room under a grow light, or by like a really bright windowsill, or maybe in your garage. There's tons of options. If you really want to do it, just figure out where you want to do it. Is it in your garage? Well, you're going to have to get like a grow light set up. That's going to be a bigger investment. If you're going to do it just like container garden, you're going to need to buy some containers. You're going to need to buy some soil, but you can get that going. See if you like it. And then we can talk about, okay, now I'm going to go all in. I want like a bigger plot. Are we doing raised beds and really going to invest into it? Are we doing just like tilling out a plot in my backyard and doing in-ground, which is what I do, which is cheaper, but there comes the challenges of weeds and pests and things. So veggie garden, if you're looking at fruits, easy fruits, technically not a fruit, but rhubarb is good, not in a container, but in ground. Strawberries, definitely do it in a container, or you're going to have them everywhere. And then everything else is a little bit more advanced. So I wouldn't recommend really any other fruits for beginners. Strawberries, pretty easy to grow. There's going to be two varieties, either everbearing, which is going to give you some strawberries throughout the summer. You're never going to get like buckets full of strawberries though. So don't expect like, oh, well, I'm not going to buy any berries because we're going to have strawberries all summer. No, you might get like enough for like a day or like a topping at a time. You're not going to get like so many that you're going to be overwhelmed, other than maybe early in the season with strawberries. If you get June bearing strawberries, you will get all of them in, it's in the name, June. But then they're kind of done for the rest of the season. So they are just going to be green sitting there, and they're going to want to spread, which if they're in container, they're not going to spread. If you're going the other route and you're like, I don't care about veggies, or I'm already doing it, then hunting and fishing, you can do the same thing. Again, you don't have to hunt. You can go fishing, arguably less of an investment cost, because really all you need is your license and a fishing pole and whatever bait you're using, and you can go fishing. You can go trout fishing. You can go bass fishing. A lot of people don't love to eat bass, but you can go and fish for different freshwater, even saltwater, bigger investment. But if you're coastal, you can do that. You can go, and that is technically wild game, wild caught fish, wild game. So you can go and do that. Then you process it, gut it, scale it, and enjoy that meal. Again, the point here is trying to improve our relationship with food. The point of this episode. And by going through a process where now we're no longer disconnected with food, which is what a lot of people's issue is. A lot of people are very disconnected. We go to the grocery store, we buy something prepackaged, it's in a bag, it's in styrofoam, whatever, it's in a box, come home, eat it, and then we go online and we see influencers being like, this is poison. Or we don't have to do for all of our food. In fact, for a beginner, I would not recommend it because it can get very overwhelming unless you're one of those people that if I'm doing this, I'm going all in which case that's you're more like my personality and you're more like Ryan, who I just had on as a guest talking about gardening, in that case, go for it. If this is going to be something you're actually going to do, like, like, hey, we are doing this, we're going all in, and I'm just going to do as much as I can this year, and then we're going to expand every year. Remember that you can always buy more containers. You can always add year to year. See if you like it. Be part of like harvesting your food, and it can help improve the relationship you have with food as you see where it's from. Is it the only thing? Like if you have a really bad relationship with food, is it the only thing that's going to improve it? No, but it can help you with improving. It can make you look forward to things. So for example, I look forward to, okay, it's that time of year where the seeds are planted. You don't have to buy seed. Beginners, I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying seeds. I would recommend starting off by going to a local nursery, buying the plants. And I would not necessarily recommend a big box store because they tend not to have the best care for them. Just Google Maps search nursery plants, etc. You'll find quite a few places, probably. So I would recommend trying to grow some of your own things, work on other aspects with your relationship to food, which I've talked about in other podcasts, and use this to help you with that of, okay, we are enjoying this on a Friday night. Yes, it might be high calorie, but I worked really hard. We're going to enjoy this. And then it can help you remove that guilt of like, I worked my ass off for these tomatoes. Like we had to fight off these pests, all these other things. And you know what? We're going to sit down. We're going to have this pizza that I made my own sauce with. And that's where I was like, oh shit, this is kind of what Chris was talking about of this food I made myself from start, like literally from the tiny little plant all the way up to where we're having it tonight, maybe with friends and family. Yeah, it's a little bit of a story behind it. And then you can start doing that with more and more of your food. Obviously, to a limit, not everyone's going to be able to source 100%. That is literally why we have farmers, why we have grocery stores. But you can try to source more of your food through your garden. And this is where, if you want to try to support more of the local community, maybe you free up a little bit of your budget to then go and spend at a local farmer's market or something. That being said, you will have to invest some money into gardening. No matter what style you do, there's going to be repairs each year. There's going to be new soil, fertilizer, things of that nature that you need to do each year, unless you live in ground, like have in-ground perfect soil. And you might get a few years out of that of like, we don't have to do anything. Like in that case, you struck gold. That's awesome. Where we are in Pennsylvania, it's very clay. It's very alkaline for whatever reason. So plants need a little extra amendments. We put a lot of compost down and things like that we had to buy. Crazy expensive? No. But it is something that, hey, if we just stuck with containers, it would have been a little bit cheaper. But I feel like I'm starting to ramble now. So that's ways to kind of think about improving your relationship with food. Maybe, hopefully a few helpful tips for you for getting started. Every situation is going to be different. That is not the purpose of today's podcast. It was just to kind of like push you, if you thinking about it or you've already dipped your toe into it, of viewing it as a way to help possibly improve your relationship with food, along with other aspects that is going along with that, to change the view you have with food, and to enjoy it, because food should be enjoyed. It is not just macros. It's not just calories. It's not just about burning fat and building muscle. It is about also enjoyment, having it with family and friends and others. And that is, my friends love coming over to my place because they know, okay, especially summertime, like Chris is going to pick something, we're going to have it, and it's going to be awesome. Like we're going to do sausage, peppers, and onions, but we're going to have appetizers with shishito. So those peppers were picked right then and there. I don't grow onions right now, and I didn't do the sausage, but a part of those meals were sourced, and then you can taste like, holy shit, this is way better than usual. Or when you mess up, you're like, dang it. How do I make sure I don't do that again? Anyways, without going too much longer, that's going to be it today, guys. Again, I will be traveling next week, so I'm not sure how many episodes. I'm not sure if we're just going to do 1 episode or 2 episodes, but as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, follow the channel, give it, if you're watching on Spotify or listening on Spotify and Apple, make sure to leave a 5-star review, as that helps push the show out so more people can find it.